Hey everybody, welcome to video 19.3. This video lecture is going to rely heavily on video 47 from the high school portion of the side. There's just a few extra things with the cardiac cycle that need to be covered for dual credit here. So when you listen to heart sounds with the stethoscope, you're doing what's called auscultation. That's going to be auscultation. You can listen to lung sounds, heart sounds, different things like that. You're just using a stethoscope to listen, basically. But since we're dealing with the heart right now, we're going to talk about the famous lub dup that the heart makes. The lub clinically is going to be called the S1, and it's going to be caused when the AV valves slam shut. So what happens is the ventricles will contract, and since you don't want blood to flow backwards from ventricles to atria, those AV valves are going to close to prevent that blood from flowing backwards and make sure that blood goes the correct direction. The dup sound is going to be called the S2, and it's going to be caused by the SL valves closing when the ventricles relax. So as those ventricles relax, that creates an area of low pressure within those ventricles. Blood naturally would want to flow backwards into those ventricles, but because of the cup shape by those SL valves, blood will start catching those and filling them, and they're going to slam shut, causing that dup sound. That is the S2. So those are the main ones. Those are usually the ones you hope you have nonstop for all your life. You do have S3. It's very difficult to hear, rarely actually heard, but you'll see it in athletes, pregnant women. Sometimes you'll also see it with congestive heart failure in the elderly. In that case, it's bad, although when you see it in like athletes and children and stuff, usually you're probably okay if you hear S3. But it's caused by blood flowing into the atria or blood sloshing around in the ventricles creates some sort of little sound, or the actual tensing of those chordae tendinae. So a number of different things can cause S3. Just if you hear S3, usually that's going to mean you need some further tests. Clinicians that hear S1, S2, and S3, they're going to call it the Kentucky Gallop, just named after basically the sound that a horse makes while it is running. You do have a fourth sound, the S4. It's going to be heard when the atria contract and push blood into a very stiff or a non-functional ventricle. Usually this means that the left ventricle is failing or has failed, and you are in some pretty big trouble if you're hearing S4. If you do hear S4, it's going to come before S1. So that's going to be when those atria are pushing in that blood. If you hear S4, S1, and S2, they're going to call that the Tennessee Gallop. It's a slightly different sound than the Kentucky Gallop. And if you hear both S3 and S4, two of those that probably warrant some further tests on your heart, they basically add those numbers together, and that gives you the S7. And so with this diagram here, you can see the relative amounts of pressure being formed on the blood within the heart. You can see where those sounds, the S1, the S2, the S3 would form. The S4 would come before S1. But you can see those AV valves slamming shut. That's going to give you the S1. That increases pressure because those valves slam shut. The ventricles contract. Those ventricles are very, very strong. That's going to increase the pressure. And then the valves will open. You'll get the semilunar valves to close. So that's going to give you the S2. And then a little bit later, you can get the S3, depending on the individuals, just for whatever various reasons might be causing S3. Another heart sound, or an unusual heart sound that you may hear is called a heart murmur. Oftentimes when people talk about issues with the heart, a lot of them may have some sort of heart murmur caused by some sort of sloshing of the blood instead of a very regular flowing of blood. Heart murmurs will get graded from 1 to 6. A lot of people actually may have grade 1 murmurs. They're just very, very difficult to hear, and they're the least serious. But it goes all the way up to 6, which are the most serious. To catch murmurs, you can listen to a stethoscope in 4 different areas to identify which valve is probably failing and causing that sloshing. Usually the sloshing, I forgot to mention, is caused by a valve not fully closing. So if you want to listen to the aortic SL valve, here's approximately where you're going to place that to be able to zero in on that aortic SL valve here, there. You're going to put the pulmonary valve right there on the chest to be able to zero in on the pulmonary sound or pulmonary SL. The tricuspid valve, you're going to put it right on the apex of the heart, basically. And if you want to listen to the mitral valve, it's going to go all the way over here. And so this is also a way clinicians or physicians, when they're listening to lung sounds, they can also listen for heart murmurs because depending on when you are breathing in, breathing out, they can hear different things with your lungs. But also when you are breathing in, that inhalation is going to amplify the sound of those right side heart murmurs, and expiration is going to amplify the sounds of those left side heart murmurs, just depending on where blood is moving between atria ventricles right and left. Okay, so that is video 19.3, supplementary video 19.3. Again, a lot of this is relying heavily on you being able to recognize those P, Q, R, S, T from video 47 on the high school side.